Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. This is pretty exciting. This is our first bracket rundown show of the 21-22 season. It's a show we're going to be recording pretty much every week from here on out. We record them normally on Thursday evenings as well. And it is Thursday, January 6th, a little after 9 p.m. Eastern as we record this. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined on my sides up here by John Titel and David Griggs, or at
I, I,
least
I'm here. I'm
his
here.
chair. Um,
I'm here.
Down below me, we got Joby Fortson and David Dorman. And what we are going to be doing on the show is
Bracket,
a version
bracket,
of what the
bracket.
selection committee does, but really not even in any format that they really do it. So I think maybe that's not even a good way to describe it. But uh, we've done this show in various different formats over the years. We're going to try something a little bit different even tonight. What we're going to be doing is building a seed list. That's a 1 through 68 list of the teams that we feel, as of right now, as of games that have gone final by 9 p.m. on January 6th. Anything that went final later than that this evening will not be considered unless it goes final as we record and we decide to make an adjustment because of it. But we will be building a 1 through 68 seed list that will be how we are ranking the 68 teams that we feel are in the tournament right now. After the show is over, we're going to bracket that up. If you look below us, you just
Down there?
cheated, but there is
Yeah.
a bracket down there of what the bracket would actually look like.
Yeah,
Uh,
but hey, the bracket doesn't give you the analysis. It just gives you the end result.
and we will have all that analysis. But what we're going to do as a starting point for our analysis here is we're going to start with Joby, your computer metric, the number one rated computer
Wait,
metric in
wait,
terms of predicting the committee in the world, the
Jobies.
JNG.
What about the Griggs NG?
Uh,
What the?
You see, David's been stuck in the puppet bunker all those years, and so he doesn't fully know the J and G. No, and guys, it is a great honor to launch, so to speak, the seed list as a baseline. The J and G, as Chad mentioned, is the number one rated computer modeling for the tournament. In other words, it matches, it is better than any other computer metric at actually guessing who's in the field and the seed list associated with it, according to bracket, and that is verified by Bracket Matrix. There are human bracketologists, John Titel being a perfect example, that will be more accurate because no numbers are perfect. You know inherently, hey, that team should be lower or higher in some obvious cases. And so, it's good to mix art and science. This is the science of it, so to speak. The highlights I want to mention on the JNG before we get started, because there will be some teams I strongly disagree with where they are seated, but often that is due to, at this stage, the JNG is a snapshot of how teams are right now. So if you say, let's take a team is undefeated, and we'll hit that probably in lines 1 or 2. Team's undefeated. The JNG saying, hey, they had an undefeated season. They views it as if they're 35-0. Well, a 35-0 team from a major conference is going to be on the one line. Okay, plain and simple. At this stage, there may be, we can say that team is almost destined for a loss via the eye test. They're not the dominant, they're not the dominant team that everybody thinks they are. They're not Gonzaga from last year, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll get to that. Another component is that also applies to, hey, we don't have a ton of development on the schedule. So teams might not have had the opportunity for big wins, or they haven't played enough games to where, hey, they got one big win. So that means that's kind of skewing the averages among everything. So we'll get to that, those examples, but without further ado, I'll hand it off to Chad.
Okay. What I'm going to do is pull up our screen share right now and show you the screen we're going to be using for this and for a lot of the future bracket rundown shows as well. It is a list of 1 through 68 in groups of 4, which would represent each of the seed numbers, and the seed numbers are there as well. There's a little counter here in the bottom left corner. Shows how many at-large bids are remaining, 36. When that gets down to zero, we will be done. We will be showing the rest of the single bid leagues down at the bottom, the 13 through 16 seeds before we're done here, but we're not going to really be discussing those very much. As I pull up each team, and let's start with the number one team overall. I don't think it's any Any surprise, Baylor? It's the number one team in the J&G right now,
Right.
at least. We also have a few other ratings here, just quickly. The first rating is the net rating, the main NCAA metric. OAR rating is a rating that we kind of developed here. It's an average of all of the various metrics that are out there, at least all the major ones. SOS is your strength of schedule. POM is your Ken POM rating. J&G is obviously is the J&G rating that we're going to be going off of as our baseline for tonight.
Nailed the first one, Joby. Well done.
Well, here is the first four according to the J&G. After Baylor, we've got Auburn, USC, and Kansas. And according to the J&G, these are your one seeds right now. Now, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to throw it out for a little debate here, see who we feel should be coming down off of this, or do we like them at all? Titel, let me start with you. Do you think that the J&G has the one seeds right as of right now?
Most, but not all. Even though I do love undefeated teams, I can't look at USC's metrics and put them above a team like Duke. So I would veto USC and recommend Duke.
You would take down USC and recommend Duke. Dorman, what do you think about that? And these other three teams as well: Baylor, Auburn, Kansas.
I'm right with John. I had Baylor, Auburn, Kansas, and my fourth number one seed was also Duke. So I'm right in line with John.
Well, let's go to team sheets here real quick here and to take a look at Auburn and USC. But Griggs, you had a comment?
Well, let's take a look at Auburn first.
Okay. Actually, Auburn is up there on the right already. That's why it's giving me an error. So let's go to put USC here on the left.
Yeah,
go ahead. Auburn is right there.
Okay, well, when I look at Auburn, and there's some good stuff there. The neutral floor win against Loyola Chicago. They haven't beaten a protected seed away from home or a protected seed, I don't think, at all. Whereas to me, and again, we all have our own criteria. What do you look for? When I look for somebody on the one line, you need to have that win against a protected seed away from home. They may be good enough to get it between now and the end. They'll certainly have opportunities, but a team like Gonzaga has done that. I just can't have Auburn all the way up on the one line without having checked that box.
So you're going to a two-loss team.
Yes. A two-loss team with wins away from home against protected seeds, two of them. Well, one of them.
Joby, you are the creator of the J&G. I think we've got a little bit of consensus already that USC is not really one seed. Duke should be there. Right. What about taking Auburn out in favor of a Gonzaga?
I like the Auburn win, and I'll use what the J&G did. Auburn was about a 2 to 3 seed, but then the win against LSU happened. LSU is a protected seed. They are, especially right. We'll see if they get more than one loss, but that was an undefeated team walking in. The net, forget the J&G, the net is in 5th, so that says a lot. So I think Auburn still is very credible. But Gonzaga, then J&G underrates Gonzaga at this point in time because they've had some cancellations. So the overall record ratio isn't tremendous. It will get there. You presume that they will get there. So I'm not necessarily opposed to Gonzaga being in over Auburn, but I definitely see why Auburn is there. USC's there because they're undefeated, period. That's right. I'm in concurrence with everybody else on that.
My other problem with Gonzaga is my problem I had with them heading into the season. Yes, those 3 wins are very nice, but look at the other teams they beat. Look at all these sub 200, sub 250 wins. I complained about the fact that they scheduled all this non-conference garbage at home, and I think that kind of weighs down metrics a little bit, and I think that's kind of weighs down the strength of schedule at 126, and that's a reason to keep them down also.
Okay, and you make a fair point, Chad, but how about somebody else like Arizona or Michigan State that also checks the box and that's lifted a little more weight than Gonzaga has? That's my thing with Auburn is that they just don't have the protected seed win away from home. And if you're a 1 seed, you better have that.
Okay, I think that the consensus, though, was to leave Auburn on the one line.
Well, the consensus is wrong, but okay.
And I'm fine if we're getting picky. Drop Auburn below Kansas and Duke, which seem to have less of an argument, from folks. In other words, I know that's.
I think it's a fair as kind of the arbiter of making the final decision here. I think that's fair to make Auburn the last of the 1 seeds. There is, obviously depending on where you fall on that 1 seed line, it affects who your matchups are and the like. it'd be a more difficult task as the fourth one seed than as the best one seed. Also less favorable. You'd probably end up going out west as the fourth one seed for your site, for your regional site. Um, but let's keep rolling along here. And Dorman, we did drop USC off the one line. I'll leave them there on the top of the two line and go to the next three teams beyond these in the JNG. Would be Arizona, UCLA, and Michigan State. Notably, the JNG has Gonzaga, as you can see at the bottom right corner there, down on 9 as a 3 seed. So, a couple of questions is, is the Pac-12 line here correct, or should we be, or should we be Pac-12 and Gonzaga make even more West Coast, or what should we be doing?
I have Gonzaga in right now on the 2 line ahead of USC. The thing going forward here for the Pac-12 is I don't see any schools besides those 3 we just listed there at 5, 6, and 7 overall losing to anyone else in the conference. There's going to be very few losses for those 3 teams. The Pac-12 is let's be honest, bad at the bottom and the middle. It's just not good. There's not much there. So these teams are going to continue to win almost all these games. But having said that, I don't have USC on the 2 line. I have Gonzaga on the 2 line with Arizona, UCLA, and Michigan State.
Titel,
very good, Dorman.
Titel, you do you agree with him?
It's a pretty solid group from Joby here, but I mean, the Zags did beat UCLA by 20 at a neutral site. So I don't, and because UCLA got bit by the COVID bug and hasn't played in a month until today, while they're a good team and arguably worthy of 2 seed line, I don't see how they can be ahead of a team that beat them by 20.
So would you leave USC up here then and take UCLA down in favor of the Zags?
Yes.
Okay. So Griggs, I know you want the Zags up here too, and I think there's a consensus they belong here. What are your thoughts?
Well, okay, I like all those teams better than USC. Everyone that we've mentioned, I kind of agree with Dorman. I've got another one here and I'm not even sure where they are in the JNG, but I love Wisconsin. All the way up. They're my last 2, but I have them very, very high on my seed list. I think they have one of the most impressive wins of the year, if not the most impressive. Certainly it's in the top 2. They've played a killer schedule. They've won away from home. I love this whiskey team.
I'll put the Wisconsin, who has a home loss to Providence on their resume as well. Up on the left there versus UCLA, who only loss was to Gonzaga on the right there.
Right.
And you're saying that you like Wisconsin better than UCLA.
I do. I think the neutral floor win against Houston and certainly the win at Purdue is better than a singular home win. No, and again, I don't want to, that win against Villanova was an excellent win, even though it was at home. But and I realize that you're just sort of splitting hairs at this point. I don't want to dismiss the Providence loss entirely, but Whiskey was not at full strength when that game was played. But again, you can't just ignore it. It is there. If there's a reason not to put them up there, then it would be the home loss to Providence. But God, they won at Purdue. I mean,
Providence is competing for. Yeah, I know that. After last night, we looked the other way a little bit, but Providence has had a very good season today.
Yeah.
Just as a note, Wisconsin is playing as we record this. They're actually up early in the second half, actually midway through the second half on Iowa. But Joby, you've got the JNG. Your JNG actually has Wisconsin down as the 5 seed. So I think they're going to end up higher than that when we're done here. But do you agree
the
with
top
Briggs
5 seeds before there were some metric changes today? They were 4. So I mean. I don't really have. I think I would have Wisconsin. I mean, it's a reasonable argument all the way through. I think I would have Wisconsin behind UCLA, and USC might not be undefeated when people are watching this tomorrow morning, because I could see Cal out of nowhere on the road, on a road trip, upset them. Yeah, I really could. And so, but. Until that happens, I think I'd stick with USC and UCLA ahead of Wisconsin, but it's an extremely reasonable argument.
Yeah, I mean, the undefeated sounds really good, but I think that, if we've got to do a tiebreaker here, I think we'll put UCLA and USC here on the 2 in the beginning of the 3 line. I think this is a very
And undefeated with a win over a tournament team that we'll see tonight in San Diego State.
I pulled that USC. I
So,
did have that USC profile briefly here. They beat San Diego State. They really haven't beaten anybody else of any
Yeah.
note, and it may not happen until February if that's not when they play Arizona or UCLA again. Till, so who knows? But let's let's leave USC there at the top of the three line for now. I do have Wisconsin and the others under consideration, but I want to quickly throw up the other three seeds according to the JNG, who would have been Ohio State, Iowa State, and LSU. Titel, let me go back to you here. Wisconsin, I think, is a very strong argument, especially after Ohio State lost tonight, that they belong here over Ohio State. But I'll let you make whatever cases you think should be made.
I like USC. I liked Ohio State 2 hours ago. Now I think we have to drop them. But since the Big Ten is so good, I'd like to give a little Purdue love. I know that it's not their off to the best start, but they have 2 losses all year by a total of 7 points, and they've beaten like several teams who we're going to see on this board. So I would boiler it up here.
You boil it up. Would you leave Wisconsin off the three line still then?
I think I might put Wisconsin ahead of Iowa State only based on this past week. But I mean, Wisconsin gets credit for beating Purdue, and I forget Purdue's other loss. What is the name of that gym they lost in Jersey again?
That is called the Rack. It's
The Rack,
only called the Rack,
yeah.
and there's no other possible name for it. You wanted to mention another name? This is what I got for you. Griggs, I know you want Wisconsin in here.
Yeah.
Wisconsin and Purdue both over Iowa State, Ohio State. Does that make sense? And have USC, LSU with the two of them?
It makes sense, but I have Villanova in over LSU, and part of that is recency biased, if I'm being entirely honest. But when you look at the resume, while there's more losses on it than what you typically see with these other teams, they were all 2 insanely good teams, and I just love the way that they're suddenly playing.
Yeah.
And Chad, I might add, when you calculate very initially Ohio State's loss into their resume, into the J&G live, they actually fall to 16th. So the last 4 seed.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I got Villanova's resume there. They beat Tennessee. They won at Seton Hall. They beat Xavier. They do have 4 losses, but the Creighton loss is not. It's kind of lousy.
Yeah, that one's kind
bad.
of yeah. But everybody else is, solidly protected seed.
Well, Dorman, how about the idea of knocking 3 of the J&G teams out here and going USC, Wisconsin, Purdue, Villanova?
I like that because I'm with you, because I don't have LSU on the 3 seed. I really like the win, but it was at home against Kentucky the other night. So I have LSU on the 4 line, and I would put the Wisconsin, Purdue, Villanova group right there on 3.
Okay, so
I'm a big Iowa State guy here, though.
They're good.
Iowa State, you're going to really blame them for losing to Baylor. And then they have really good wins along with that. I mean, they're basically, they make USC's resume. If we're saying losing to the number 1 seed, I think we all would assume USC would lose to them. So then compare Iowa State and USC. I like Iowa State at that point.
I was about to.
That's a great.
I like Iowa State a lot of these teams.
I was about to say that. We'd be dropping a team that started out on the 1 line down yet another line, but Let me ask you this, Titel. Iowa State, USC. I think there's a strong argument. Maybe USC goes down another line and we leave Iowa State here.
I think it's pretty obvious, but you asked Titel. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think that I understand that if your only loss is to the best team in the nation by 5, that counts for a lot. But an undefeated team whose strength of schedule is noticeably better than Iowa State's, I would not have a problem with either of these teams. But I would lean towards the Pac-12 bias in the undefeated team.
Okay, and that is fair. They did play a lot of good mid-level teams there. The tier 2, tier 3 versus tier 4 garbage.
Yeah, Iowa State went to the pastry card, but they also went to the meat market. Xavier, neutral floor, double digits, blasted Iowa, held on to beat Texas Tech, won at Creighton. That's hard to do.
They held on to beat a Texas Tech team that had 7 players. They had 7 players active last night. The the Texas Tech.
Okay.
And
And
the
the
Texas
Iowa-
allowed to win it.
I don't think Texas Tech has any. Yeah, they don't have any wins. So
An Iowa State versus Villanova argument. They both went to Creighton. Villanova lost. Iowa State won.
that's a good point too. I like the Iowa State team, but I like them.
Okay, so if we go ahead and we leave this as is, and we have Ohio State, Iowa State, and LSU all dropping down to the 4 line. They would be joined there by the next team up on the JNG, and now I'm starting to get a little bit confused here, but I think I've got them. Would actually be Colorado State.
Ooh, that
again,
is high.
Undefeated team here. Joby, it's the JNG. They've got the undefeated team. You mentioned that bias towards undefeated teams. Here we go, a Mountain West team making a protected seed.
Well, I mean, they don't have USC San Diego State win, but maybe one day they'll have it, And they did take down Creighton. They took down St. Mary's. So they've done some work. It's just their overall, strength of schedule is what's dragging them down to this point. But
it's a lot better than Iowa State.
Colorado State goes to undefeated. They're there. They're not probably at this level, but they are most certainly in the discussion in the near future.
Dorman, is there anybody else that we should have been considering here for a protected seat other than these 16 teams we have up here?
The only debate I had over that last spot on the 4 line was Colorado State versus Houston. That was, I went back and forth for a while on that. I ended up with Colorado State, but it's tight with Houston.
I have to mention this team because they, like earlier, I was gushing over Whiskey's win at Purdue. Alabama. I mean, that win against Gonzaga in Seattle. No one left has anything close to that.
Yeah, well, let's quickly talk, Titel, first about the Houston team here. Do you have to consider the fact that they have lost so many players recently that are not going to be coming back this season?
Certainly. So the way it's going to be affected is there's 2 things. One, like their win-loss record, I assume, is going to go down. They took care of South Florida handily the other night, but I don't think they can just beat up on teams like at SMU and Memphis in the months ahead without that. But my question for Joby is, how does the JNG handle a team that loses because it's missing 2 of its best players?
Yeah, there is a ratio that comes into play. It's not that over the years, it hasn't really had a huge impact. We saw it with Oregon. If you remember, when they had players coming back, players leaving, it's almost like because you're going to see the things come out in the wash as you approach the tournament. And in particular, Houston, I'm not panicked about. Show me a tournament team that Houston has beaten in that group. If that remains
I'm with Joby on that.
If that remains the case, Houston's just going to be where they are. And I don't think they're a protected seed at this point. As a matter of fact, I actually think if anything, J&G's bumping them up a little bit. Yeah. Now, what's funny is you go to bracket matrix and Houston's like a 3 seed or some ridiculous because everybody's thinking about the Final Four last year. And the eye test, where I think eye test, they're, pre-injury, they were pretty good. But let's see how it plays out. And that's how the J&G will react. That's how bracketologists like John Titel will react.
Yeah, and if I could just really briefly comment, we did mention this Alabama team as well. My problem, Griggs, with Alabama is I know their 3 losses are all tier 1 losses, but they are not top half of the bracket losses. Davidson, Iona, Memphis. I mean, Iona maybe could say they're a top half of the bracket team, but that is the closest. But it's but it's 3 losses to teams that are very questionable, would not necessarily be in the field, or maybe are not in the field at all as an at-large. Although
I think that at least 2 of them are in the field, and then when you look at their wins
as conference leaders right now, though.
Davidson and Iona, I think they're inside the bubble, but
it'll be close.
And one of the reasons Davidson and Iona are inside the bubble is because they have that quality.
Because they beat Alabama.
But Alabama does have other wins that then bring up Davidson and Iona because Davidson and Iona have amazing records.
I mean,
and then they have a big win with their amazing records.
Yeah, but Alabama has beaten really, really high caliber teams, whereas Houston hasn't. And it's not just them, it's Providence, it's UConn. I'm just not that big on Houston, especially after they've lost like 28 points per game with injuries.
Well,
I mean, that's a lot of scoring.
Let's leave this 4-line where it is here. We'll definitely Houston and Alabama would be the two of the next teams up here on the J&G, along with Providence, who actually would have been above Houston and Alabama, and Xavier would finish off the 5-line though. Let me go, Dorman. Let me go to you here first on these 4 teams. Do you like this group here now on the 5-line, given what we did on the top 4?
I have Illinois ahead of Xavier. I have Connecticut ahead of Xavier. Yeah. So I do not have Xavier on the 5-line. I'm good with Houston, Alabama, and Providence. The Providence loss the other night in Marquette doesn't really bother me. I've seen them play. They're strong. They're tough. I think Ed Cooley's group is really good this year. But I have Illinois or Connecticut ahead of this Xavier team.
Yeah, Ty, what do you think? Is Xavier does J&G have Xavier overrated at number 20 overall?
They've got a lot of good wins. Ohio State, Va Tech, Marquette. I think there's merit to putting them here. I'm just telling you, after watching Providence collapse the other night, I really would prefer a team like Tennessee, who's got a win over my Arizona Wildcats.
Yeah, Griggs, that's an interesting call here. What about Tennessee, who's up there on the right? There's Xavier on the left, who did beat Ohio State. Ohio State can't win on the road. They proved that tonight in Indiana.
Okay, I don't think having Xavier here is outrageous, but what I will say is literally everyone you've mentioned, including Tennessee, I have ahead of Xavier. I mean, Xavier's on my next line down, I think, but of course they're better. Like,
well,
I like Tennessee more than
you want to defend the J&G at all here?
Providence has 4 wins against tournament level teams. That's a lot.
I have Providence at Xavier. UConn.
So I'll defend Providence. I'm not here to defend Xavier. They are where they are, and I think a team like Tennessee actually is extremely interesting when you start talking about the win against Arizona is tremendous, and so I'm kind of partial to that Tennessee argument.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I got to defend Providence here also. Griggs, you just trumpeted Wisconsin as being like the number 1 team in the nation a few minutes ago. They won at Wisconsin. I mean,
I had you don't have to defend them to me. I had them higher than this. You just wouldn't call on me. But yeah, I think they belong even higher than this place. Of course, they shouldn't be any lower than that.
All right, so should Tennessee be the team that replaces Xavier here?
Them or UConn or Illinois. Or Alabama. Alabama's there.
I
like UConn a little more than Tennessee.
Yeah, the Auburn win. We just talked about how awesome Auburn is, and their only blemish is a neutral court to Connecticut. That's pretty.
Yeah,
that says something to me, about the Huskies.
Ty, you're the one that brought up Tennessee. Do you think they're right that UConn might be above Tennessee?
No veto.
No veto. All right.
I do like the Tennessee team. Could you go back to that, Chad, a sec? I do like the Tennessee team. And the SEC is very strong, so they will get their chances. But after the Arizona win, North Carolina, Colorado, this down year, Ole Miss, probably bottom of the SEC. The only really solid win so far is the Arizona to me. And they have lost versus Texas Tech, and that's why I had Tennessee on the 6 instead of the 5. But at this point, we're cutting hairs.
I can't believe how much you are disrespecting Presbyterian right now. All right, let's go ahead. We'll put UConn in here as this team here. We can just see where they would have come in at 25 in the J&G, which is actually would have been a 7 seed. So UConn would not have even been on the next line according to the J&G. The next 4 teams up on the J&G would in fact be on the 6th line here. We would have been Xavier, so let's just drop them onto the next line here, along with Tennessee, Texas, and it was before today's game, but San Francisco on the 6th line before they lost to Loyola Chicago today.
And part of that is the record in a non-under-the-radar league, right, Joby?
Yes.
Okay.
And let me, I'll quickly just tell you in the next few seconds where they are now given their loss. They would have fallen. They would have only fallen to the 8 line.
Right, well, let's drop San Francisco off of here for now. Then let's tentatively drop them onto the top of the 8 line, even just so we don't forget about them later on. Your next team up on the J&G would have actually been West Virginia, though, not yet Illinois.
Oh my God! I
Greg,
thought I had.
I'll go to you first.
Well, okay, I didn't have West Virginia quite this high, but I had them 25th. So I was a little surprised that they liked them this much. I love that line. The only thing I had Seton Hall 24, West Virginia 25. I'm not that big on Texas, and if you pull them up and you've been paying attention to me at all for the last several years, you know that I just can't stand this type of profile. There's Texas right there. They've done, they've beaten a so-so team at home, and that's about it.
I don't know that that's a bad profile at this point.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it isn't worthy of, like, say we put them on the 9 line. Who would they have beaten on equal terms that's ahead of them?
West Virginia.
On equal terms? Well, okay. Yeah, they beat them at home. But I like this West Virginia team. I thought the win at UAB was worth a lot. They did beat Connecticut, although it was at home. That's a team that wins a lot. But one of the things, their road record 1-1, record away from – okay, I'll give Texas some credit for the West Virginia win, but even though they have it, I like West Virginia a little more.
Well, let me go to Titel. West Virginia, one team – that did not come up yet that we've already discussed is Illinois. Maybe should Illinois be somewhere in this line with those wins at Iowa and at Minnesota?
And you have to remember the loss at Marquette, I believe, was the last game of Kofi Coburn's suspension. So even though it was on the road to a team that's not in the field, it was only by 1 point without an All-American player. The Tier 2 loss is not helping. And obviously, if they'd beaten my Wildcats at home, they'd be seated several lines higher. I think David mentioned Seton Hall earlier. I would not give up on them. We're talking about to beat Texas, beat Rutgers, one at Michigan, who's having an underwhelming year, at Butler, underwhelming year, but 3 great losses, Ohio State, at Providence, Villanova, who are already in the field. So I'd give a little Seton Hall love up here, but West Virginia is good too.
I'm having a hard day. It's everybody's first time. I had Illinois pretty high too. I kind of lost track of them as I was scratching things off my list, which is hard to do without any arms, by the way.
Okay, well, we got to make some type of decision here.
Chad, can I throw one more team in the mix here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had, just to play devil's advocate, we had San Francisco at the bottom of that 6 seed. Well, where's Loyola?
Loyola, after tonight, no joke, has moved up to the 7 line. Past San Francisco.
Okay. Loyola Chicago would have been on the 8 line, so well, let me ask you this,
and they
Dorman.
moved to 27th on the seed line after the win.
Xavier, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia. Do we leave that alone, or do we sub in one of these 3 Illinois, Seton Hall, Loyola teams here?
I honestly have all 3 Illinois, Seton Hall, and Loyola ahead of West Virginia.
Okay. Joby, would you agree with that also?
I like the Illinois call, to be very honest.
Let's go ahead.
And I think, remember, Illinois had a nice win against Maryland. I know Maryland's been mediocre at best this year, but that is yet another win against that NIT, CIT type level that might boost Illinois' profile ever so slightly.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and drop Illinois here in on the 6th line? We'll drop on the 6th line, make West Virginia down to the top of the 7 line. Mm-hmm. We need a few more teams there. So going back down to the list here, Seton Hall would in fact be the next team. We have discussed them already. Beyond Seton Hall, also on the 7 line.
Loyola Chicago is the next team on the new seed list.
Okay, so with that update, really thank you. We will put Loyola Chicago there. Beyond them is the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah.
Team we have not yet discussed here. Titel, let me start with you. What do you think of those 4 teams there? And does Kentucky belong here? Does Loyola belong here?
The Wildcats absolutely do. 8-point loss to Duke, 4-point loss at Notre Dame, 5-point loss at LSU, all very quality losses. Not a lot of meat on the bone on the other side of the resume, but they destroyed Carolina neutral site. They destroyed Missouri at home. They beat Ohio by almost 20 at home. So while the schedule is not giving them a bunch of opportunities, when you beat the teams you should beat and have close losses to the teams you shouldn't, I think that has 7-8-ish range written all about it.
I'll tell you, look at the teams we've not yet mentioned. I don't even know if there's really an argument for very many other teams on these to move up here to the 7th line. I think we just kind of hit the wall here at at number 28 of every good team in the nation. But is there, Griggs? Is there anybody we're missing significantly at this point, in your opinion?
Some that are close. I had both of these behind Kentucky, but I think they're at least worth a look because of where they kind of top out. Marquette and Creighton.
Marquette and Creighton.
Yeah.
Okay, let me throw them up here under consideration so we can see Marquette
Yeah,
on the GNG. GNG would be 53, which means they did not even make the field on the JNG.
Right.
They're playing in.
Oh, I'm sorry. They are the last team in on the JNG on the field, and Creighton would have been a 10 seed, 9 or a 10 seed on the JNG.
Okay, you kind of need to look at the team sheets, and since we're throwing teams under consideration, I actually like Iona even more than Loyola Chicago.
Right. Well, we'll get to Iona in a second here, I think.
Yeah.
But let's first of all, Griggs, you got to sell me on a 9-6 team at this point in the season. I understand discussing them as a first 4 team. I don't understand discussing them. As a wearing weight in the first round seed.
Xavier and Wisconsin, I don't think Wisconsin has the one home loss to Providence. I don't believe Xavier has lost at home. UConn and UCLA are protected seeds. The only one that really has you holding your nose is St. Bonaventure. When you're talking about playing and losing the protected seeds, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't belong on the 8 line.
I think
and I like
you got to
the win
win
against
more
West
games.
Virginia on a neutral floor. What's that?
I think you got to win more games. You got to be better than 9-6 at this point in the season to be up.
Well, when you've played that many teams that are protected seeds, I kind of think that it's more or less. To me, that's no different. I dismiss that the same way as I dismiss wins against home bind games against sub 200 teams. I mean, they have the win against Illinois. They have a neutral floor win against West Virginia. And like of those losses, I'm not saying that they belong on the floor line. I'm saying that like they should lose those games if they're an 8 seed and they're playing protected seeds.
Well, let's real quick here. Dorman, does Creighton belong under consideration here? Because Griggs is not going to sell me on Marquette. I don't know if he's going to sell anybody on Marquette this early.
I do have Creighton under consideration here. I would also toss in Iowa and Oklahoma.
Okay. I'll tell you what. Why don't we just take a look at the next few teams here? No, I can't because we can't type things correctly.
So Chad's against playing a solid schedule. He's impressed by home.
I'm not impressed by 9-6. And 53 JG to 58 net.
You said you hit a wall. If you look at the raw numbers of the J&G, just the raw numbers, not the rankings, there is a gap. But there is one more team that is listed before the gap occurs. And it has not been said yet. And that's the next team up, the Minnesota Gophers.
I really like this Minnesota team.
Not only Minnesota the next team up, but I think the next 2 are going to surprise people here. Next up, according to the JG, is TCU, followed by Iona.
Okay. Well, okay, I like that.
And Titel, let me ask you. I like the Minnesota. I like the San Francisco here personally, but TCU?
No, if you need a Big 12 team from Texas, let's get the Red Raiders in there. Losing to Gonzaga in Phoenix, 4-point loss at Providence, 4-point loss at Iowa State, and they've been down not 1 but 2 of their starters this year, Terrence Shannon and Kevin McCullough, due to illness or injury. So when you're losing to good teams without your best players, all of whom are already on the board, I think that you can easily make a case for them to be ahead of teams like Iona and TCU. For God's sakes, like they beat Tennessee at a neutral site. Like, give them a little credit.
That sounds awful lot like the case I just made for Marquette. I don't know what Chad has against Matt, but
Marquette on the left here. Let's put Texas Tech up on the right here to compare a a team that is worthy of consideration at this point and one that isn't. Let's see, 10-3 versus 9-6. Let's
Okay,
see.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
Let's
Okay,
see,
yeah,
no
10
tier
and
2
3,
loss,
and
no
3 of
tier
those
2
wins were
loss,
actually
no
against
tier
top
3.
300 teams.
And 2 injured players.
Yeah, I'm gonna, yeah.
I mean,
But
Texas
I'm
Tech
gonna.
has mopped the floor with everybody below 300. I will give them that.
Dorman.
I'm with David on this. When you look at Texas Tech, if Marquette would have played Grambling, Prairie View, Lamar, Incarnate Word, and Omaha, they'd have more wins too. But they played a tougher schedule.
I can't
just say
forgive these 2 losses. I can't forgive those 2 losses when you play.
Texas Tech did beat Arkansas State, which is your St. Bonnie's equivalent.
Okay. All right.
I'll say, Joby, how about that? Remove TCU here, put Texas Tech in place.
Yeah, and the reason TCU's there is TCU has the gaudy record. They only have 1 loss. It's to Santa Clara, but they only have 1 loss, and they do have, little sneak preview, they do have 1 tournament win. Most people might not realize it's a tournament win, but they do.
They have more sub 300 wins than anyone we're going to put in this field.
Well, I don't know if we're going to put TCU in this field or not. That has not yet been decided because we just pushed them down some. But TCU does have a win over Nicholls State. So,
yeah, but like Texas Tech has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wins against sub 300 teams.
I'll tell you what. Does anybody think TCU even belongs in the 9 seed? I think I'm just going to hold off on them. Just drop them down to maybe the 10 line here. We discuss them later. But let me pull up the.
If TCU finishes 34-1, they're going to be a lot higher than what we're talking.
Let me pull up the next.
Of course, that will mean a sweep of Baylor, but
The JNG would have on the 9 line BYU, who we've not yet discussed, Oklahoma, who we did discuss briefly, Davidson, the A10 leader, and Iowa, who we also briefly discussed. So no Marquette, no Creighton yet. I think that maybe Titel, is there a case that Marquette or more likely Creighton belongs in over one of these 4?
More likely Creighton. And I mean, if the numbers say Iona's that good, so be it. And I understand like beating Alabama counts for a lot and losing to Kansas and Belmont isn't that bad. But like, are you honestly telling me that they're one of the top 32 teams in the country?
I think they are.
We didn't really
do.
Iona. Joby, your ratings have them that high. Does Iona, with just off of the win over Alabama, really belong?
And Titel's hitting why. It's a win over Alabama, and the losses are, pretty solid losses, that you're not of teams in the field or in Kansas case on the 1 line. So you understand why the numbers spit there, but Iona's on a threat. If Iona loses to one of the teams not, in the tournament, in the at-large field level, then all of a sudden we're going to think very differently of them. If you're going strictly off resume, I totally get and agree with where Iona is. But if we're going with the other elements that Titel correctly points to, Iona is not as good as Creighton. I really don't think they are.
She's got a much better resume than Texas Tech.
They have a better resume right now.
Should we maybe move everybody up 1 spot here, bring Creighton into the 9 line also, and drop Iona down to the 10 line? Is that kind of where you're going, Titel?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Davidson, I'm just going to point out, Davidson has the same beneficiaries that TCU and Iona do right now. I think Iona should be ahead of Davidson, without a doubt.
Okay, so, this would have been, let's go put Creighton in here. We'll put Iowa in here. I'll leave Davidson down here in the 10 line also. Is there somebody else maybe that we're overlooking? Or should be Iona, TCU, Davidson on the 9 line is basically the debate. Or should we go somewhere else? Dorman, do you have thoughts on this?
I would move. I like this Iona team. I think they're talented. I have Iona on the 9 line, right under Iowa there on the 36th overall slot. Yeah.
Maybe that's the way we do. We just drop them, slide them into the very bottom of the 9 line, as opposed to dropping them to the 10 line, which would push Davidson and TCU down. We have not yet put that Marquette team in, but why don't we just go ahead and show the next few teams here according to the JNG would have been TCU and Davidson, So again, have to see where the TCU belongs in at this point. Beyond them, Titel, I know you love your under the radar schools. Both Belmont and Murray State finish out the 10 line.
Both have solid resumes. I mean, like, I get it, and I would have them at the 11, but I think that jumping them up one is fine. I want to put in a power conference school like Florida or North Carolina, but I look at their resumes and, like, I don't know if, because it's like, I think Creighton would beat Iona, like Joby was saying. I don't know if Florida would beat Murray State. I don't know if North Carolina would beat Belmont.
Yeah.
Griggs, would you go with this line then? TCU, Davidson, Belmont, Murray State? I mean, again, is TCU in at this point?
In my opinion, no, but let me look at them again, because that is, I mean, the J&G, and I realize it's early in the year, the data's scattershot. Maybe that there's a reason. Have I just caught them on the wrong nights? I mean, I've watched them play. I just don't see a whole lot there to be excited about. Quite frankly, I think everybody on the 10 line would beat them that we have so far, and maybe a couple teams that we haven't even put in yet.
Did you think should TCU maybe move down to the 11 line then for the time being?
For the time being, yeah. I did not have TCU in my field.
Let's hold.
And
off
I had
on
Texas
TCU.
Tech like about right here.
Let's hold off on TCU again here for a moment. Then what happened? We lost something. Let's just do this. The type thing here. Davidson, Belmont, Murray. If we held off on TCU, Joby, would you go to just your next J&G team, which, by the way, is Wyoming, or would you go somewhere else?
Once again, the strong record comes in. No, you go somewhere else. And I think this is where you start talking about, and this is an eye test thing, but they're not far off from this spot, and that's North Carolina.
Yeah, how about that, Dorman? North Carolina, 10 seed.
Yes, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm good with it. It's right where I had them. You could throw Indiana in this mix. I think they're right around North Carolina, TCU, right around this area. Tough. These are real tough calls. They're all right there. But like I said last night on Under the Radar, I firmly believe Belmont and Murray State belong in before these teams that are about to be put in: Carolina, TCU, Indiana, Florida. So I think we have a good job here.
Okay. This is where I think I think this is where we're all. I think the J&G may start to fall apart out here. Unfortunately, Joby, a little bit as we get towards the bubble, especially on this line here, because technically, again, TCU would be the next team, followed by Wyoming, followed by San Diego State, which I think is kind of surprised nobody's mentioned them yet. And technically, according to the J&G at the moment, the Wagner Seahawks will be next. I'm going to go ahead and veto that myself. Drop them down.
Wagner had a nice win in overtime tonight.
Drop them down. Quite a ways
Right.
for now. Probably down to the top of the 13 line. Let's just throw them way. We'll
At
throw
best.
them way over there.
Because you're below UAB and New Mexico State, and those guys are actually pretty good in my opinion.
But how about St. Mary's instead, which will be the next team below them? And Joby, TCU, Wyoming, San Diego State, St. Mary's is a real four teams here. And again, do we keep jumping TCU down more lines, and does Wyoming really belong in this field? I think maybe the bigger questions here.
I think the what's behind the next door will actually show why TCU, we've probably dropped TCU. I'm even fine with TCU falling below St. Mary's and San Diego State, but I think that's about where you stop on the free fall that we've done. Wyoming's different. Wyoming's definitely built on their record. One more loss, they're in trouble. But you know what? The Mountain West isn't that bad, so they'll get their opportunities. And so we'll see how they play out. But yeah, they're up here because the fact is they only have a loss to Arizona, which is, very high protected seed. And then a loss to Stanford that's not so great, but an overall record that's good.
Chad, pull up Marquette right now.
But Griggs, you will win me over on Marquette over Wyoming easily. I'm not going to fight you on that.
The teams that we are looking at.
It's now time to discuss Marquette. I agree with you.
The teams that we have put in ahead of them, it's ridiculous. Okay.
Titel, what if we pull Wyoming out of here, replace it with Marquette, and make this this line here?
If you're counting games that ended before our show, I would put it on Indiana actually over Marquette, just because they have 3 losses all season by a combined 10 points to Syracuse, Wisconsin, and Penn State, all away from home. And they just beat a 3 seed in our bracket by 16 points.
Okay. So would you go TCU, Indiana, San Diego State, St. Mary's? Is that how you do it?
Love it.
Okay. Which would drop Marquette down to our 12 line, obviously. We did get Indiana in. Actually, Florida, the only team we've discussed that did not come in. Dormer, before I move on to the 12 line, is there anybody else that we should be discussing here that we have not yet discussed?
No, the teams that I had right on the line were all discussed. I did have Wyoming right in this mix right here, again, ahead of TCU, but the only team I would throw in there right now is Wyoming.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if Wyoming would once again be the next team up on the J&G, because we have not yet put them in and they were in already. If we want to go by the J&G, there's a couple more surprises here. The next team up would be Texas A&M. Joby, did I read that right?
Yep. And
then Monmouth.
Remember, gives
Monmouth? Yeah.
TCU a tournament win. By transitive property, that gives TCU a tournament win.
Then I'll fill out the 12. Actually, that will fill out all of our at-large bids there. Miami being the last of the at-large bids. That would complete all the at-large bids with Marquette, Wyoming. With Marquette. With Wyoming, A&M, Monmouth being the second Metro Atlantic team, and Miami being the first 4. So the question is, are those really the first 4 teams at the moment, or are we missing somebody glaring, such as Florida?
Florida's kind of glaring.
I mean, I'm 100% fine with the Florida for Wyoming trade.
I'm actually a little surprised Wake didn't make our field.
Yeah, Wake's
that would have been the very next team up, actually, according to J&G. The first team out would have been Wake. The Florida would have been the first team out. Wake would have been the second team out. I'm sorry. And just for reference here, the next 2 teams out, according to J&G, beyond that were UCF and Abilene Christian. As New Mexico State actually would have been rated ahead of them. They'd be the final spot in the 50 there as the WAC champions.
Abilene Christian pretty good. I don't know if they're all the way inside the bubble. Where do you, I've got 2 that I don't know if I want them in the field. I do like them better than some of the teams we've put in. Their resumes are a little soft, but what about UAB, especially having just won at North Texas and Ohio U? And this is more, I think these are just really good teams.
Well, I'll tell you what, Briggs, though. The thing is that they're both on the 13 line, though, as automatic bid winners at the moment.
Okay. So. Where did you have them in the J&G?
And
on the 13 line.
Drew, when you're the automatic bid winner from one of these conferences, when I'm doing a seed list, is the play-in games, if you're splitting the play-in games, all the play-in game guys get to be in front of you, because hypothetically they've played themselves in and you are maybe at large worthy, but we've just seen over the years that's where the break comes. New Mexico State, Ohio, Chattanooga, who you didn't mention, and UAB all split play-in game folks. That's why they comprise the 13 line. The last of the 12, because we're moved Wagner down, and the 13 line.
Okay, so what you're saying is that in the J&G ranking, not your seed list, but the ranking, they're sort of like sandwiched in between the first 4 teams.
Yeah, you'll see New Mexico State 47. Miami is the last team in at 52. And then when Chad fills it out, you'll see it.
Let's circle back to the last 4 teams in here. Titel. We came up with, according to J&G, Wyoming, A&M, Monmouth, Miami. The next teams up, according to J&G, would have been teams like Florida, Wake Forest, UCF, Abilene. Listed a few more there: Louisville, VCU, SMU, Vanderbilt, Virginia. Not even fitting on the screen. Virginia Tech, Michigan, or Mississippi State. Did we get them right? Do you think the J&G got them right, or do you think you'd want to make some moves here?
I would actually like to sub in Mississippi State. Their best rebounder and second best scorer, Tolu Smith, has played exactly 5 games all season. With him, they've beaten teams like Richmond and Arkansas by double digits. Without him, they've lost. I think that this is a case where you have to not just look at the metrics and the numbers and the stats, but look at who's on the court. And when one of your best players is not on the court, they almost beat Colorado State, which nobody else has done all year, at a neutral site.
Well, Dorman, what about that? Maybe Mississippi State belongs in this field.
Titel makes a great point, and actually Mississippi State had Colorado State in that game. They basically gave it away. It's tight. I do like Mississippi State. I think that injury will come in. There'll be a lot of discussion in that selection room over the injury and how much, but if they play strong in this SEC, which is, like we've said all year, loaded, and they pick up some strong SEC wins, yes, they will be in the field.
Yeah, right now, until that happens, I don't think we should put them in.
Well,
their weakness is they don't have a even close to, because Arkansas is not near the bubble, right, as of this moment. They don't have a even close to tournament level. Arkansas maybe NIT even there, but they're like 8th seed NIT.
Well,
but
yeah,
they will get their opportunities. All they have to do is start winning against the schedule that's in front of them. They don't panic if you're a Mississippi State Bulldog and being out right now, because you will get your opportunities with a full squad, and they will get the bonus off that.
Yeah, I want to go back to you, though. If you want to put Mississippi State or one of these other teams in, which of these four, or all of these four, would you take out between Wyoming, A&M, Monmouth, Miami? I think your answer is going to be Monmouth. Knowing you,
I would take out the team with the worst strength of schedule.
That would be Texas A&M.
Yes, it would.
Okay, and there is actually Mississippi State and Texas A&M on the screen here. Dorman, what do you think? Is that the move? Take out A&M, put in Mississippi State?
Oh, it's tight. I probably have A&M in over Mississippi State today because of the Tier 2 wins. In Mississippi State yet to have any wins over the Tier 1 or 2. So just based on A&M's couple of wins in the Tier 2, I have them slightly ahead. But I do like Titel's schedule of strength point there. When it's this tight and you played a very weak schedule, I lean to Titel's way.
Joby, though, maybe Florida. Maybe we just leave both those out and put Florida in if we're going to go with an SEC team. They did beat Ohio State. They did something.
So
yes, at least they did something.
Yeah, I mean, Florida's exactly. Florida at least has that really nice Ohio State win. But I want to stress, guys, Florida State stinks. So I don't want to hear an argument Florida's so good because they beat Florida State. Florida State, did you see the game? I mean,
yes.
Wake deserves it more than Florida because Wake beat Florida State by 40, and Florida State didn't beat them by 40. Florida didn't win by 40.
I gotta say this. I've been banging Monmouth's drum all year, and now I'm kind of wanting to pull back on him. And I know this is sacrilege being an under the radar guy. I kind of like Wake more than Monmouth.
Okay, so let's do that here. Let's take this. Basically, our final decision we got to make here is between Monmouth and Wake Forest.
Is under the radar.
Well, fair enough. Okay, yeah. And part of it is,
would you take a team that won at Virginia Tech and beat Northwestern at home over a team that has 7 true road wins?
That's a lot
out of the Metro Atlantic.
That is a lot of road wins.
That's a pretty horrible non-conference strength of schedule for Wake. But when your best win is at Towson by 8, I don't know that I can say you're better than Wake.
They did beat Princeton, though.
Who hasn't?
I thought I'd get some Monmouth love there. Dorman, you want to make a decision here, Wake or Monmouth?
Part of it is just that. Okay, I'm sorry, Dorman, but the loss. I mean, had they just held on to beat Charlotte?
I have Wake. I have Wake ahead of Monmouth.
Wake. And Joby, you agree with that, Wake?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll put Wake Forest in here. We'll drop Monmouth back down to the under consideration, just missing the field. They could be a 1 seed in the NIT.
And that way, with Wake in, we have 3 ACC teams, not 2.
No, Miami's in 2, so we have 4.
That's right. Miami snuck in. You got North Carolina. Wow, what an ugly conference.
Real quick, I just put the rest of the bracket, the teams up there. Wagner, as we mentioned, the top dropped to the top of the 13 line. Ohio, Chattanooga, UAB, three teams that Griggs mentioned earlier as potentially being able to get up into that at-large decision. Below them, according to the JNG, Oakland, Navy, South Dakota State, Towson, Princeton, UC Irvine, South Alabama, Vermont, Liberty, Weber State, Corpus Christi, Asheville, Norfolk State, and Southern. Again, these are each the highest rated JNG team in the conference, not necessarily the conference leader, so it may differ from some other projections you see out there right now. On that note, though, I'll leave this up here. I want to run through each of you for any other final thoughts on what we did or anything else tonight, now that we have a field of 68 that will be bracketed down below us. Joby, why don't I start with you?
Well, thanks for being patient to all our folks out there. You've definitely see that things need to play themselves out, particularly as it regards to records. Hey, if TCU winds up with, only one or two losses playing that Big 12 schedule, we're not talking whether we should drop them down to the 11 line, but hey, make a spot for them on the 1 line. That's not likely going to happen. It'll be really interesting to see how things play out as the time goes on.
Absolutely. Titel.
I think we did a good job. Congrats to Joby for getting the JNG out there as a good measuring stick for us. I think it'll be interesting to see because there's been so many teams on a COVID pause, and it looks like, for the most part, fingers crossed, we're trending the right way with UCLA back on the court and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see all the movement that will happen in the weeks ahead, not even months ahead, just weeks ahead, when you get these teams back on the court playing. It seems like almost every other night because they have to make up so many postponed games.
It's November all year long.
We are seeing teams play back-to-back nights, which are, in January and February. You don't never seen that before. I don't
never. Only in November.
Long Beach State did play the last 2 days, but Dorman.
For the sake of just this point here, I'm going to move New Mexico State on the 50 overall to where Wagner is. So that would make the 13 seeds New Mexico State, Ohio, Chattanooga, and UAB. The 4 seeds better be ready because those teams can all win a game, and they might all be, and some of them might win 2. That is a very strong group of 13 seeds. And it's great to be talking about the brackets and teams instead of COVID and missing games tonight.
I agree with that completely. Griggs, you want to finish us out?
Yeah. It's one of the things, and there's going to be a lot of movement between now and the end of the year. It's like, why do we start doing this so early? My response to that is like, well, why not? We could start doing it in November for all I care. But my biggest dissent was Marquette, but the good news is that they will have the opportunity for it to play out. At the end of the year, they'll either win the big games and shoot up the seed list, or they won't, and they'll end up where they are. So pretty much every team, unless they're from an under the radar conference, if they don't like where they are, will have a chance to get to where they want to be or where they should be. And if they're overseeded, then they'll fall off. It's just kind of interesting because Belmont, Murray, they're essentially their path to staying inside the bubble, and I guess Iona too, is that they can't really lose to anyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, other than each other, and I think but if we're saying Belmont and Murray are 10 seeds right now, I think there is room for another loss, maybe one more loss, but one other.
Maybe
loss.
One more, yeah. The OVC is terrible. I mean, outside of those two, it better not be to anyone other than each other.
And I gotta say, I was impressed that we had 2 OVC teams in here. We almost had 2 Metro Atlantic teams in here. We ended up with the 4 West Coast Conference teams in here. We actually ended up with, 3 Mountain West teams. We got Wyoming in there. I was kind of surprised about, it's not until you start actually doing these that you realize how bad the teams down at the end of the bubble are. If you had told me a week ago, or just a couple of days ago before I started looking at this stuff, oh yeah, Wyoming is going to make your field, I would have laughed at you. But there they are, and I don't
Nobody gets higher.
I don't think we were wrong at this point by putting them in. We might be in another week when they lose a few more games, but I guess on that note.
And what helps Wyoming, we didn't mention, is that Grand Canyon and Utah Valley are much better under the radar-ish, I'll say ish, teams out of the WAC than your normal viewer's going to know. These are 2 teams that are NIT level. not high NIT level, but NIT level. And so that gives you, maybe if those teams start losing in the WAC, that by relationship will kill Wyoming if Wyoming doesn't pick up the necessary wins in the Mountain West that they need to do.
But Utah State, another team that could start to climb the list here a little bit.
Okay. Well, we're out of time, so I do want to thank everybody for joining us. On behalf of John Teitel and David Griggs up here, Joey Forza, David Dorman below me, I'm Chad
Bible
Sherwood.
College.
You can go down,
Where's
lower
Carver?
down. You can go lower down below us now. Check out the final brackets, see who each of these teams matched up with. But thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week with more podcasts, and we'll be talking to you again real soon.